fourth grade. Today's mini lesson is going to be a little different. I'm going to be reading chapter 5 out loud for you, and I want you to be listening and thinking about symbolism or important passages that are there for a reason, reflecting the theme that is going through the remainder of the story. Do you really think anyone will come? Ellen asked nervously, turning to Anne-Marie in the bedroom. Your father doesn't think so. Of course not. They're always threatening stuff. They just like to scare people. Anne-Marie took her nightgown from a hook in the closet. Anyway, if they did, it would give me a chance to practice acting. I'd pretend to be Lise. I wish I were taller, though. Ellen stood on tiptoe, trying to make herself tall, and she laughed at herself, and her voice was more relaxed. You were great as the Dark Queen in the school play last year, Anne-Marie told her. You should be an actress when you grow up. My father wants me to be a teacher. He wants everyone to be a teacher, like him. But maybe I could convince him that I should go to acting school. Ellen stood up on tiptoe again and made an imperious gesture with her arm. I am the Dark Queen, she intoned dramatically. I've come to command the night. You should try saying, I'm Lise Johansson, Anne-Marie said, grinning. If you told the Nazis that you were the Dark Queen, they'd haul you off to the mental institution. Ellen dropped her actress pose and sat down with her legs curled under her on the bed. They won't really come here, do you think? She asked again. Anne-Marie shook her head. Not in a million years, and she picked up her hairbrush. The girls found themselves whispering as they got ready for bed. There was really no need to whisper. They were, after all, supposed to be normal sisters. Papa had said they could giggle and talk. The bedroom door was closed, but the night did seem somehow different from a normal night, and so they whispered. How did your sister die, Anne-Marie? Ellen asked suddenly. I remember when it happened. I remember the funeral. It was the only time I've ever been in a Lutheran church, but I never even knew what happened. I don't know exactly, Anne-Marie confessed. She and Peter were somewhere together, and then there was a telephone call, and that there had been an accident. Mama and Papa rushed to the hospital. Remember? Your mother came and stayed with me and Kirsty. Kirsty was already asleep, and she slept right through everything. She was so little then. But I stayed up, and I was with your mother in the living room when my parents came home in the middle of the night, and they told me that Lise had died. I remember it was raining, Ellen said sadly. It was still raining the next morning when Mama told me. Mama was crying, and the rain made it seem as if the whole world was crying. Anne-Marie finished brushing her long hair and handed her handbrush to her best friend. Ellen undid her braids, lifted her dark hair away from the thin gold chain she wore around her neck, the chain that held the Star of David, and began to brush her thick curls. I think it was partly because of the rain. They said she was hit by a car. I suppose the streets were slippery and it was getting dark, and maybe the driver just couldn't see. Sorry, my cat just knocked a rock off of my desk. Papa looked so angry. He made one hand into a fist and he kept pounding it in the other hand, and I remember the noise of it. Slam, slam, slam. Together they got into the wide bed and pulled up the covers. Anne-Marie blew out the candle and drew the curtains so that the open window near the bed let some air. See the blue trunk in the corner, she said, pointing through the darkness. Lots of Lisa's things are in there, even her wedding dress. Mama and Papa have never looked at those things, not since the day that they packed them away. Ellen sighed. She would have looked so pretty in her wedding dress. She had such a beautiful smile. I used to pretend she was my sister, too. She would have liked that, Anne-Marie told her. She loved you. That's the worst thing in the world, Ellen whispered, to be dead so young. I wouldn't want the Germans to take my family away, to take us someplace else, but still, it wouldn't be as bad as being dead. Anne-Marie leaned over and hugged her. They won't take you away, she said, not your parents either. Papa promised that they are safe, and he always keeps his promises. You're safe here with us. For a while they continued in the dark, but the murmurs were interrupted by yawns, and Ellen's voice stopped, and she turned over, and in a minute her breathing was quiet and slow. Anne-Marie stared at the window where the sky was outlined and a tree branch moved slightly in the breeze. Everything seemed familiar, very comforting. Dangers were no more than odd imaginings like ghost stories that children made up to frighten one another. Things that couldn't possibly happen. Anne-Marie felt completely safe here in her home with her parents in the room next to her best friends beside her. She yawned contentedly and closed her eyes. It was hours later, but still dark, when she was awakened abruptly by the pounding on the apartment door. Anne-Marie eased the bedroom door open quietly, only a crack, and peeked out. Behind her, Ellen was sitting up, her eyes wide. She could see Mama and Papa in their nightclothes moving about. Mama held a lighted candle, but as Anne-Marie watched, she went to a lamp and switched it on. It was so long a time that they had dared to use the strictly rationed electricity after dark that the light in the room seemed startling to Anne-Marie. Watching through the slightly opened bedroom door, she saw her mother look automatically to the blackout curtains, making certain that they were tightly drawn. Papa opened the front door to the soldiers. This is the Johansson apartment? A deep voice asked the question loudly and terribly accented Danish. Our name is on the door, and I see you have a flashlight, Papa answered. What do you want? Is something wrong? I understand you are friends of your neighbors, the Rosens, Mrs. Johansson, the soldier said angrily. Sophie Rosen is my friend, that is true. Mama said quietly, please, could you speak more softly? My children are asleep. And you will be so kind to tell me where the Rosens are. He made no effort to lower his voice. I assume that they're home sleeping. It's 4 a.m. after all, Mama said. Anne-Marie heard the soldier stalk across the living room toward the kitchen. From her hiding place in the narrow sliver of an open doorway, she could see the heavy, uniformed man, a holstered pistol at his waist, in the entrance to the kitchen, peering in towards the sink. Another German voice said the Rosens' apartment is empty, and we're wondering if they might be visiting their good friends, the Johanssons. Well, said Papa, moving slightly so he was standing in front of Anne-Marie's bedroom door, and she could see nothing except the dark blur of his back. As you see, you are mistaken. There is no one here but my family. You will not object if we look around? The voice was harsh, and it was not a question. It doesn't seem that we have a choice, Papa replied. Please don't wake my children, Mama requested again. There's no need to frighten little ones. The heavy-booted feet moved across the floor again, and in the other bedroom, a closet door opened and closed with a bang. Anne-Marie eased her bedroom door closed silently, and she stumbled through the darkness to the bed. Ellen, she whispered urgently, take your necklace off. Ellen's hands flew to her neck, and desperately she began trying to unhook the tiny clasp. Outside the bedroom door, the harsh voices and heavy footsteps continued. I can't get it open, Ellen said frantically. I never take it off. I can't even remember how to open it. Anne-Marie heard a voice just outside the door. What's in here? Shh! My daughter's bedroom, and they're sound asleep. Hold still, Anne-Marie commanded. This'll hurt. She grabbed the little gold chain and yanked with all her strength and broke it. As the door opened and the light flooded into the bedroom, she crumpled it into her hand and closed her fingers tightly. Terrified, both girls looked at the 3 Nazi officers who entered the room. One of the men aimed a flashlight around the bedroom, and he went to the closet and looked inside, and then with a sweep of his gloved hand, he pushed the floor several coats of bathrobe that hung on the pegs against the wall. There was nothing else in the room except a chest of drawers, the blue-decorated trunk in the corner, and a heap of Kirsty's dolls piled in the small rocking chair. The flashlight beam touched each thing in turn. Angrily, the officer turned toward the bed. Get up! Come out here! Trembling, the 2 girls rose from the bed and followed him, brushing past the 2 remaining officers in the doorway of the living room. Anne-Marie looked around. The 3 uniformed officers were different from the ones on the street corners. The street soldiers were young and sometimes ill at ease, and Anne-Marie remembered how the giraffe had, for a moment, let his harsh pose and smiled at Kirsty. But these men were older, and their faces were set with anger. Her parents were sitting beside each other, their faces tense, but Kirsty was nowhere in sight. Thank goodness, she slipped through everything. Your names, the officer barked. Anne-Marie Johansson, and this is my sister. Quiet, let her speak for herself. Your name? He was staring at Ellen. Ellen swallowed. Lise, she said, and cleared her throat. Lise Johansson. Now, Mama said in a strong voice, you have seen that we are not hiding anything. May our children go back to bed? He laughed scornfully as he suddenly grabbed a handful of Ellen's hair. Ellen winced. You have a blonde child sleeping in the other room. You have this blonde daughter. Where did you get this dark-haired one? From a different father? From the milkman? Papa stepped forward. Don't speak to my wife in such a way. Let go of my daughter, or I'll report you for some treatment. Or maybe you got her someplace else. From the Rosens? Then Anne-Marie, watching in panic, saw her father move swiftly to a small bookcase and take out a book. He saw that he was holding the family photograph album, and very quickly he searched through its pages and found what he was looking for and tore out 3 pictures from 3 separate pages. He handed them to the German officer who released Ellen's hair. You will see each of my daughters, each with their name written on the photograph. Anne-Marie knew instantly which photographs he had chosen. The album had many snapshots, but it contained a portrait taken by a photographer of each girl as a tiny infant. She realized, too, with an icy feeling, why Papa had torn them from the book. At the bottom of each page, below the photograph itself, was written the date, and the real Elise Johnson had been born 21 years earlier. Kirsten Elizabeth, the officer read, and he let the photograph fall to the floor. Anne-Marie, he read the next one, glazed at her, and dropped the second to the floor. Lise Margaret, he read finally, and stared at Ellen for a long, unwavering moment. In her mind, Anne-Marie pictured the photograph that he held, the baby wide-eyed, propped up against a pillow, her tiny hand holding a silver teething ring, her bare feet visible below the hem of an embroidered dress, and her wispy curls. Dark. The officer tore the photograph in half, dropped the pieces on the floor, and when he returned, the heels of his shiny boots grinding in the pictures, and left the apartment. Without a word, the other 2 officers followed. Papa stepped forward and closed the door behind him. Anne-Marie relaxed, clenched her fingers of her right hand, and still clutched Ellen's necklace. She looked down and saw that she had imprinted the Star of David in her palm. So I want to talk to you about symbolism, and I wanted to talk to you about some of the things that are important in this text. You might realize that about what is this really, really about? Some of the things I want you to think about are, we've already studied Tiger Rising. Some of the important symbolisms that we saw in Tiger Rising is the suitcase, a tiger in a cage, and the rash. And those all had to do with having to let feelings out, not trap feelings in, being honest and talking about what's going on in your life and your feelings. And the suitcase and the tiger were purposely put throughout the entire story. So in this chapter 5, there's several things that keep coming out. Dark hair, candle, trunk, and of course, the Star of David necklace. In today's work, I really want you to look at the big ideas that we find in small moments, small details, and small objects. I want you to think, how does this part fit with the story, and what is it trying to teach me about life? I want you to remember that everything is in the books that you're reading on purpose. Look through your text, look through the books that you're reading, look for those small moments. What do those symbols represent?